Have you ever noticed that your darkest moments sometimes brought your clearest thoughts? When you think of depression, you probably picture someone sad, exhausted, curled up and hopeless. But here's something most people miss. Hidden inside that fog is something almost paradoxical. Something psychology researchers have been studying for decades, and it challenges everything we think we know about depression. If you've ever had a deep conversation with someone who's depressed, or been in those depths yourself, you might have noticed something strange. A sharp, almost ruthless kind of logic. Some people struggling with depression report becoming more realistic, more analytical, even more rational than they were before. I know, it sounds backwards, right? How can a condition defined by emotional pain actually sharpen logic? But psychology and neuroscience suggest that depressed minds often process reality with a level of sober clarity that can be genuinely startling. So let's dive in. One of the most fascinating and controversial ideas in psychology is called the depressive realism hypothesis. Back in 1979, researchers Lauren Alloy and Lynn Abramson ran a simple but revealing experiment. They asked people to judge how much control they had over a light bulb turning on. Here's what they found. Non-depressed participants consistently overestimated their influence. They'd press a button, the light would turn on randomly, and they'd think, yes, I did that. Their brains were telling them a comforting story about control. But depressed participants, they were eerily accurate. They didn't assume control where there was none. They saw the randomness for what it was. Now, the research, since then, has been mixed. Some studies replicate this, others don't. But here's what we do know. While most people lean heavily toward optimism and self-serving biases, depression seems to strip away those comforting illusions. And that raises an uncomfortable question. Is seeing reality clearly always a gift? Depression is often triggered by loss, relationships ending, opportunities disappearing, health declining, or meaning evaporating. When your world shifts in painful ways, your brain scrambles to make sense of it. And logic becomes a survival tool. Think about grief for a moment. It forces us to confront what really matters, but it also disrupts everything. Studies show grief impairs focus, memory, and decision making. It's common to bargain with reality or shoulder irrational guilt. Yet paradoxically, this same process can sharpen logic in unexpected ways. Stripped of optimism and distraction, the mind reduces life to bare essentials. What remains is a narrowed, sober clarity, not flexible or hopeful, but piercingly realistic. Psychologists call this analytical rumination. Some researchers suggest it evolved to help us zero in on complex social problems. When your brain can't lean on hope or distraction anymore, it shifts into problem-solving mode, forcing you to analyze causes and consequences in exhaustive, sometimes excruciating detail. That's why many people report that during depression, they suddenly notice things they hadn't before. They question long-held assumptions. They see through social performances. They recognize patterns others miss. The depressed brain becomes a detective that never sleeps. On a neurological level, depression literally changes how your brain processes information. Your reward system, centered on dopamine pathways, often becomes less responsive. Things that once brought joy feel flat. And here's the kicker. Without the pull of reward, your brain isn't swayed as much by rose-coloured thinking. Some studies suggest people with depression show increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for planning, reasoning, and evaluating consequences. The result? A colder, less emotionally biased approach to decisions. Now, this doesn't always feel like a gift. The same analytical style that spots logical inconsistencies also notices life's unfairness with brutal clarity. But it does explain why many people in depression find themselves drawn to philosophy, complex problem solving, or brutally honest self-reflection. Your brain is trading warmth for accuracy. History is full of philosophies that sound uncannily like the thoughts of someone experiencing depression. Stoic philosophers taught people to detach from emotions, face hard truths, and prepare for the worst. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Sound familiar? Existentialists like Kierkegaard and Sartre wrote about despair as an unavoidable condition of human existence. Camus asked whether life was worth living at all, then spent his career explaining why the answer is yes, but only if we're honest about the absurdity first. For someone who's depressed, these aren't abstract theories. They're lived experience. They're words for what you already feel. When optimism has been stripped away, when joy is no longer guaranteed, philosophies built on logic, acceptance, and meaning-making can feel more honest than simple positive thinking ever could. For many, it's genuinely comforting to hear the Stoic reminder that pain is part of life, or the existentialist claim that meaning must be created, not found. These ideas reveal that depressive clarity isn't just illness. It's part of a long human tradition of seeking wisdom in hard truths. But here's where we need to be honest. It's not all hidden strength. The logic of depression can easily turn into paralysis. When you see every possible downside with crystal clarity, risks feel impossible to take. If you know relationships can end, jobs can collapse, and futures can derail, it becomes genuinely hard to find a reason to try. This is the double-edged sword of depressive clarity. It's rational, but not always helpful. We need both realism and optimism to function. Without hope, logic grows heavy. It strips life of motivation, of movement, of possibility. That's why good therapists rarely tell people to just think positive. Instead, they encourage holding both truths simultaneously. Yes, life is fragile and unfair. And yes, despite that, meaning and joy are still worth reaching for. This isn't contradictory, it's dialectical, it's wisdom. So, are depressed people more logical? In some ways, absolutely. Depression strips away comforting illusions, offsets positivity biases, and pushes the brain toward deep analysis. But logic without hope is incomplete. It's a car with perfect steering but no fuel. The challenge and the healing lies in integrating both, holding onto the clarity depression provides, while slowly, carefully reintroducing warmth, optimism, and the possibility of joy. In that sense, depressive logic isn't something to cure, but something to rebalance. If depression has ever made you feel like a cold observer of your own life, know this. Your logic is a survival instinct. It's your brain's way of saying, if I can understand it, I can survive it. Respecting that doesn't mean glorifying suffering. It means honouring that clarity while still holding space for hope. So let me ask you, did this resonate with your experience? Have you ever felt that strange combination of darkness and clarity? How have you seen logic and hope coexist in your own life, or struggle to coexist? Share your thoughts in the comments below. These conversations matter, and your perspective adds to them. And if this video gave you a new way to think about depression, hit that like button and subscribe for more conversations that challenge what we think we know about the mind. Thanks for being here. Thanks for thinking with me.